welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. Today, Bridget and I are so excited. We have singer, songwriter, actress Taylor Dayne, catching up with her. She is having the best midlife and beyond, and we are thrilled to talk to you today. So, welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Well, we kind of like to start when we're catching up, talking about what you're doing now. And you have been traveling a whole bunch. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing and where you've been?
Well, I know it sounds so odd to say you've been traveling. Yeah, we're back out on the road. I'm a touring artist, obviously, as well. And it's just so wonderful to reconnect with, after a long hiatus, imposed on us. Fans are having the best time. The audiences are amazing. And I'm out on tour. So it's just take a look at my, calendars and my tour dates, and you'll see. And you'd be shocked. I'm probably in a city near you.
Yeah, I was checking. I was checking that. It was Destin, Florida, which we're in Nashville, but I have a place around there. And I went, she's in Destin in October.
I'm in Destin, but this is a replay. This is also a replay show. So there's a lot of dates that we're trying to replay and cover from groundwork that were COVID related cancellations. And then, certainly it's just the overwhelming response to live music right now is just fantastic. So
right. And a lot of our listeners, it's right up our alley. Ladies of the 80s.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right there. It takes us right back to where we had fun. Not that we don't have fun now, we do. But you remember when we used to have fun? Those dancing days and just the fun times of it. So it's so exciting. And on top of this, you're touring. You also have twins, so a lot of women are in the same boat as you. How's the mothering from the road, and how is that going?
My kids are 21 in a month. This is a different kind of mothering now. This is empty nesting, mothering from afar, and just trying to get them on the phone half the time is the challenge. You know what I mean? I'm like, if you do not pick up, what do you threaten them with?
I know.
I mean, it's not much.
Yes, it's true.
I try to go to their moral fiber. I'm like, is this like, what's it going to take for you to be a responsible, living, breathing human being kind of thing? So that's what I'm dealing with, bills, trying to educate them and honestly stop repeating myself.
Good luck with that.
we have children in our 20s as well, so both
in their 20s, not in our.
They're in our we didn't. Well, I was in my 20s when I had them, but they're in their 20s now. Yes, so
we get it. We absolutely get it. I know you're working on some new stuff, and we can't wait to talk about that. But I was curious when, obviously, I loved all of your songs, and you are a huge part of my teenage years. But you sing those songs now. How does it feel? Because you're at a different stage of life when you wrote them versus now. How different is that?
Oh, well, it changes all the time. I mean, between my 20s, where I'm first breaking, at 21 years old, where I'm basically going from the club home at 5 in the morning, you write these songs and you're starting in this musical, my career, although it wasn't overnight stardom to me on any level, but, at 22, like, I guess it is, on some level, but no, I mean, I was a girl, grew up in New York, grew up in Long Island, as well as New York City. And I was exposed to just so much a plethora of cultural inundation between theater as well as obviously music, TV, concerts, how does it differ? I sang songs that became hit records almost 34 years ago. Not all of them, but let's start from the beginning of my career, which was Tell It to My Heart. That's 1988.
We remember it well.
We remember it. Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, what were you thinking in 1988? So I'm just saying to you, what changes now is that there's a joie de vivre, correct? So my intentions are so much different than what my intentions were at that time, how my mental state, emotional state, physical state was, and I was, you don't see what's over the hill. Right. So I'm far more pragmatic now. I'm far more settled in my bones, obviously. I certainly have many years and many hits um, to say, wow, experience. So there's that. But when you have a live audience, people ask you, what's that like? And I said, it changes every night.
Does
Every
it?
night. It's a new audience. Even when I did Broadway, I had to really reflect on that, because Broadway is, like you're saying, the same lines, the same way, similar to a song. But when you're working live with your band, you can have much more, it's not more impromptu, it's more improvisational. But at the same time, words are words, right? And but your audience changes. So therefore the energy changes. Therefore, there's a different reciprocity going on. And I've had the great fortune of recording classic records. Like, I mean, Tell It to My Heart, Prove Your Love, I'll Always Love You, Love Will Lead You Back.
We see a theme there of
A theme
love
of
and
love.
heart.
You know what? My TED Talk beat you to it. I
Yeah.
thought the same thing when I
Yeah.
was writing it. I was like, what's up here? Heart, love, every one of my
Yes.
songs, and yet have still not been married, you know. Like, what's the issue?
It's I don't think there's an issue at all. It's just finding the right thing. And I read your book, Tell It to My Heart, and
Oh,
I really enjoyed your book and
yeah.
just the fascinating stories in there. And I don't think that people that aren't in your industry or in the entertainment industry, they don't realize how hard artists work. So when I was reading your book, and looking at how hard you well, just how you were saying, working at 5 in the morning, can you share a little bit about the story for the Russian area, the Russian place
Oh,
that you
well,
worked?
I worked in a club in Brighton Beach. As I said, I grew up in New York, and there was this time between right where I broke with Tell It to My Heart, and I was working with Rick Wake, and I was trying to make a very specific single that I knew would cross over into the clubs, and that would potentially get radio play, because I wasn't signed from a label. I wasn't discovered artist. It wasn't like, oh, they found me and like Whitney Houston. It wasn't like that. We knew that we need to build it and they will come. And that's, my partner was Rick Wake. And that's what we did. We were recording our own music. We were funding it. And what we called a 12-inch then was considered called hip hop. It was the beats per minute. It's fascinating. But if you grew up in Queens, Bronx, you understand, 123 to 132 is a fast record, So it's like, we call that hip hop. And then, you're talking about 1987, 1988, and hip hop sure as hell didn't mean the same thing now. So it's interesting. But yeah, it's just, history of how something happens for one person versus another it's fascinating business, but I digress. What did you want to know?
What was that journey like, being so young and just having hit after hit after hit? Was it a whirlwind? Did you even
Yeah,
realize it was
I
happening?
mean, you're going from well, one week I'm on a barge in Boston playing a radio show, and the next week they're like, you're going to open up for Michael Jackson on the Bad Tour in Europe, because my record was blowing up in Europe before it was even blowing up here in the States. So they released it 6 months prior. So there's also that Grammy window where if you're not released before like October, late September, early October, you miss a year of Grammys. So by the time I was nominated for for Grammys, just even for Tell It, just my first record, it was already 1988, 89. I was like, this has been out already 2 years, but you missed that window because it was only a single I had out. So that was an incredible period to have one song, and then exploded throughout all of Europe. And then America's like, well, we need to release this. And I'm like, I'll bet you do, but you're just selling singles, not an album. And I had been in the studio with Rick. We did Don't Rush Me. I was a demo singer as well. I mean, I was just working. And so we put that record together and very quickly.
Yes.
It was fast and hard, and there's nothing that can prepare you for that. But when you go back to the work, there's nothing that can prepare you, because when I broke, which was the late 80s, there was no cell phone. There was no internet. There was no computers. There was no sharing of files. You sat at a phone booth and basically had a calling card, and you called radio or you showed up.
Wow.
So just add that on top of, you do shows not at 2 in the afternoon, you do shows at 8 p.m. at night. So between doing radio shows, the press, you're just one human being. And then of course, as a female artist, you got to look good. So you're trying to keep up, and you're trying, it's just and I never complain about it, but nothing can prepare you for that kind of stardom. It's like look at an athlete that suddenly connects, but you can measure a hit on a ball because it either goes out the park and is a home run or it's not. You can measure a song hit only by as many calls as come in, or if it starts selling and how many units it sells, but you can't measure fame.
And
how was that?
How was that? Yeah. What was I was
opening for Michael
thing.
Jackson and just all of that?
These are all those experiences that were life-changing, but also you're just like a deer in the headlights half the time. Because it's happening, and now you're trying to, sometimes people would ask me, did you feel that? Did you get it? And I'd be like, no. But maybe a week or two later or a month later, when I was sitting in my tour bus and have a moment to myself, stillness is always where you're going to grab your best opportunities for reflection. And I'd be like, wow, did that happen? Was that Prince, or was that like, did I just meet Robert Plant in an elevator? Like, what?
Yeah.
Just say like, I really wanted to meet you. And you're like, is this black dog Robert Plant? Yeah.
That's a great story in the book too, by the way. So everybody needs to read that. Yeah. That is a
I'm
great
living
story.
out my fantasy on some level, or my, the artist that inspired me. And it's just, again, they're not normal stories because they're just not, it's the pace at which things happen. And I think we're so much more accustomed to things happening to the average Joe now. Now we're like, everybody has their 15 minutes of stardom. But, again, we're talking about the ladies. There was no cell phones. There was no, we didn't exchange files. And, I waited once a month, the magazine came out once a month, right? Maybe we had our Star magazines and we had but there wasn't paparazzi. That didn't even exist here. I found out about paparazzi when I got famous in Europe, and that was 1988, 87, 88, 89. They followed me, they hunted me down on motorcycles and everything. Didn't even exist here.
Well, it certainly does now.
Yeah.
Now it's a free-for-all, but not then. Europe.
Was that pretty terrifying? Was that scary to
there
be?
were moments that, hell yeah. Because you just can't believe how they're ruthless. I was with Michael on that tour, and I'll never forget, because we were all staying at the Mayfair Hotel in London, and there was that, a later tour is when he did, he had his children, but this was the bad tour, honey. This is the height of the height of the height. And if I'm telling you, there's thousands of people outside of a hotel waiting to catch a glimpse of somebody. I couldn't even get out of the car. Security, but like, we were trampled.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've also written songs for some amazing artists. What has that like? Do you write a song and say this would be perfect for this person, or does it just organically happen?
No, it was a song written for me. If I write a song, it's written for me. If we're talking about like Whatever You Want that Tina recorded, like that was for me. And then, my record company just didn't think it was a hit. And I go, well, or they didn't think it was worthy of my record, or whatever they felt. And I'm sure I was very disappointed at the time. Don't on any level think I wasn't, because I probably felt very strongly about it. And then thank God it got into the hands of Tina and Trevor Horn, and they made it a smash. It was a big record for her. But like, no, it doesn't start out that way. Not for me as an artist anyway.
And talking about record companies, and this is from me that knows nothing about this, it was amazing reading your book, just finding out how difficult that process is. And then, people just assume that the recording artist has one great big hit, that, they're billionaires or whatever. They have all this money. But then you think about, you're reading your book, you're like, no, you got to pay this person, that person. I
That,
mean,
how about they don't even
yeah.
give you money up front? It's not like you're getting paid. All you're basically doing is chasing that first dollar that you ever made back to the original source, which is you basically doing a a bad loan with a bank. But that's really basically all it is. It's a crash course in learning how to become a business person quite young. And then there's a lot of, they call them sharks for a reason. There's a lot of predators. There's a lot of, and then there's a lot of suckers too. They have stronger unions in the music that, once you break as an artist, or even if you're not, don't get me started with that.
Oh man.
How has it changed for female artists now? Obviously, with streaming and all that, it's changed, but was it harder back then because you were a female to break into the industry than it is now?
I don't know. I've never really kind of determined my sex as what it prohibited or didn't prohibit. I've only been born in my body and who I am. I was raised in New York. I had a different start of tenacity and a street smarts, and just knowing I came from it from a different direction. I also was halfway there because I grew up there. And I saw what it took, but I had my own struggles. I had my own anxieties growing up as a young woman. And those are the things that I can say to you as a woman, my own insecurities, my own anxieties, these are things that every young girl goes through, every young woman, identifying with what is beauty, what is image, and how much do I need to use that to influence a record or putting something out there. And it turns out a whole hell of a lot.
Do you feel a little less pressure now when you're writing songs for your new album to have to meet all those, I have to look a certain way, be a certain way,
I mean,
promote a
that
certain way?
ship has sailed, but of course, it's not pressure as much as, now I'm professional, like professionally speaking. When you're first beginning, I'll never forget the first photo shoot I ever did. I mean, if you look at those iconic photos, of like tell it to my heart, it's like, yeah, I went in a room with a couple of drag queens, and then I came out looking like, I had a tulle skirt on my head. But the fascination is that the art was created because we were also willing to take risks. And
That's
yet,
yeah.
within your soul, within my heart of heart, I also knew that this is where I've chosen and wanted to be my entire life. And that was my all 20 years prior to that. So it's as I'm saying, it seems like it's overnight, but it's not. And you wish for these and you pray for these moments. And then when they present themselves, but I'm sorry, you can't look at an album cover and go, oh, I knew that was going to be a classic. Or when you're doing it in those moments, there's just, I'm one of the fortunate ones.
Can you share the story of when you were in kindergarten, and how you were kind of chosen to be the lead in a school production?
Well, I think what the teacher saw, they come in and do their music classes. I was just an intensely, when the music teacher came in the room, and we all sat around, and kindergarten, you're talking 4 and 5-year-olds, right? So all I wanted to do was be as close to that piano as possible and listen to every word she was singing and every lyric, or whatever you want to call it, and the music. And it just moved me to such a state. It altered my reality. And that was because my reality to me was very difficult, or it was very challenging. My home life, and you read my book. So
Mhm.
I adore my parents. I adore my brothers, but there's a lot of violence in there. There was a lot of unspoken anger, and more than that, it wasn't spoken. It was raged around, and there was a lot of stuff going on. I'm also child of Holocaust surviving parents. It just goes on and on and on and on. So these are deep wounds and deep mental and emotional states of beingness, never mind a Jew in New York. So it was just is what it is, and it all comes through the music. And it all came through me sitting there as a 5-year-old watching that teacher, and just, oh my God, I felt air. I felt breath. I felt an escape hatch. That's what music gave me, a tool. And I said, I think I can be good at this. And if you're good at it and people look at you and they go, is that she sang that? And, you just keep surprising people. And it's just kind of like I got the basketball. Like, I'll keep hitting it and I'll keep shooting it. And if I'm getting good, I'm going for great, because great's the way out.
That that kind of leads me to your TED Talk, which you mentioned before, which is incredibly powerful. It's Born to Sing. And I was mesmerized watching you speak on your TED Talk. Where you were very vulnerable in it, and it kind of led to, or it was a precursor to the book. How hard was that for you to kind of get on stage and share such personal stories?
Well, doing a TED Talk in general is very daunting. There's the preparation for that is nothing, it was a 6-month preparational time. Your thematic, they theme it. This was also TED Women. It was their big summit in Silicon Valley, and it was myself with Elizabeth Lesser and Ashley Judd, and these were the gal that started the Me Too movement. It just went on and on and on and on. Black Lives Matter. This was a very important, to be part of that voice of women was one thing. And then realizing that it's not so much, the 500 people sitting in the room. It's the 13 million that this now, the platform of what TED Talk really is. And the rewrites. And like I said, it was a 6-month preparation. My incredible book, my book mama, I call her. She wasn't quite my ghostwriter, but it's who I went to, Linda Siverston, and you can look her up. She's one of the greatest teachers I've had and mentors in learning how to write, publish, and release, your own writings. But she encouraged me by telling me tell an impatient Jewish girl this is going to take 3 years easily. So don't get, maybe you should think about doing it. You have a great presence. Maybe we should think about TED Talk first. And I was like, whoosh, like, what? How does a book look at like a TED Talk first? But she was so right, because the rewrites on that alone and how long the process took. And honest to God, like I'm in my office now here, but every wall when you're writing a book had Post-its and chapter titles, and it just kept the rewrite, and it's a long, daunting, and it's a reflective process. And I'd get lost 5-6 hours writing away in stretches, very common. So the TED Talk, what you saw was vulnerable, but it also led to more of what it was, I didn't want to be a musician up there. I wanted to do a spoken word piece. I wanted to speak, tell my story, or the story that in the theme was about time. It's about time. So again, every TED Talk has a theme, and you stay within the parameters of what that is. And then you bring your stories, I guess, if you will, and you adjust to what now the thematic of the weekend is going to be. And that was, where we went with it, from what you see visually, if you choose to the entire, I think my presentation ended up being about, which was long, 14 minutes. And I did write Born to Sing, and that ended up being the closing song. And if you notice, it was more of a performance art piece. I did musical things these were songs that literally launched my little heart and took me places, and that were part of the fabric and, weaving of my life story.
Which then becomes the kind of the weaving of a lot of our stories, because your
Yes.
songs hit.
That's music, yes.
Yes.
But if you notice, the TED Talk, I did not use my material.
No,
this was Karen Carpenter too, a Nazareth songs that I heard in the 70s or that I grew up on, and music that told my story. Because I could, any song, like if you just put up Close to You, I'll immediately be at a pool at 5 years old, holding on the side of the pool, trying to, That's 1972 to me.
Right.
It's
So
close to you, you know?
you write the book, the pandemic comes by and it gets really quiet. How was the pandemic for you?
You know, it was a blessing on some levels, a lot, you know. It was very difficult for my twins. Here I was launching them into they were in their senior year, and we were getting ready for college. Like, there was nothing that could prepare us for this. And very difficult. All of a sudden, everything, you know, I had an apartment, I was empty nesting and moving in that direction, and I travel all the time anyway. So this was like a real, like, I was going to spend more time in Florida and just on and on. There were blessings and curses with it. Certainly, you know, the obvious is the world shut down. Mentally, I didn't. I was not that type of artist. I wasn't, I'm not a very fearful person when it came to that. And I also had some incredible opportunities during there. I went back to work with Masked Singer. I went back to work. Like, there were just so many other opportunities that came to fruition because I was land-based.
And
you know,
Masked
make the time
Singer,
work.
you brought up Masked Singer. That was
Yeah.
great. That was really well received. And how was
Popcorn.
that like working on that as the
It was
popcorn? Yeah.
phenomenal. It was
Mhm.
phenomenal for many reasons. One, we were masks and masks and masks. Two, the everybody that was, now that I knew, that was on the road, was no longer on the road. We had the best choreographers, we had the best set designers. I mean, and this production is top of the line. But we were all together in this little insular family and going and competing, which is, you know, at the heart of my hearts, you know, I'm a little competitor. And yet at the same time, it was really creative. Like, I had to figure out how to be myself, but not be myself. And yet it also challenge myself. And that's when you find the most exciting things, you know? So there you have it. Under the costume of Miss
But
Popcorn.
was that
Which was
costume was that
Love
costume
her.
incredibly hot? Was it hot in that costume?
I think Buster Rhymes said it best, because I didn't know when I was going to get another breath. Yeah. Listen, they had it timed. We were only allowed to be 15 minutes. It's the mask potential. Mostly that was really daunting for me, because I could only see out of a portion of one eye. As you know, this is every mask is different. These are all custom and designed and fitted as we continue. But and through my mouth. And people are like, "Oh, you're mic'd inside," and then that's what I go, "No, bitches, no." Yes, you
Well,
are
you
mic'd
said you could.
inside for when Nick's talking to you and you're answering questions, but no, that's not where that's not where the vocals, no.
I don't know how you could move in that.
I don't know
That.
how I could do it either, because sometimes I remember being in my head going, all right, I think I'm gonna fall. Sometimes I literally like was, you know, the hat, I think my mask alone was probably 2.5 foot. When you think about her popcorn head, I walked right off the stage once. They're like, "Stop walking." Popcorn. They only called you popcorn. They only called you your name. Nobody was ever identified on any. Nobody knew who you were, what you were, anything ever, except maybe a couple of producers. They kept the anonymity to such a degree. It was cray. You had to put your mask on before you even got to set. It was crazy.
That's cool.
But it made the whole thing so fun.
Oh, good.
What about RuPaul? How was that?
Well, Rue's just fabric of my life, you know, the dearest, supportive person I've known for almost 30 years, you know. But Drag Race, that is not for the weary. Okay, I mean, you saw Masked Singer. Now, Masked Singer is challenging for me in the sense that, you know, this was your voice, you're doing. This was a 4-hour jaunt every day getting into hair, makeup, Drag Race. And they were not planned. It was to create this electric owl, you know.
Wow.
And you know, some of those, you know, for the men, it's even more incredible, because you know they're putting on fake prosthetic. I mean, I can't even tell you, hips, butts, boobs, you name it, lips. I mean, how much did I really want to be a character of myself? You want to look
Oh.
either beautiful or you want to be hysterical. It's just at some point I was like, whatever. But you didn't leave that chair under 3.5 hours a day.
Wow.
Goodness.
I can't
Oh,
imagine having all that
it's
to take off too.
it because it's kabuki. You're really going into a stage theatrical, but more than that. I've done Broadway. I've done it's just an intense. The wigs are very, and each song is changed. It's intense. Intense.
And I think that's interesting to let people know what these people put into the work. I think that's important for people to know how much time.
Again, it's the work. What you're seeing is the passion of the performer and their own personal spin. Of course, look, that's with anything. That's, again, you can throw a ball over a bit, yes, it'll strike, but then it takes the personality and the character. And then of course, why do you fall in love with that ball player? Why do you fall in love with that singer? Why are you in love with that drag queen versus another, because it resonates for you differently. People, that's the energy take.
So you're now going on tour, or you've been on tour, which
Yes,
is crazy.
I'm home. I just got back. We were in the West. We were in Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane.
Do you find it like, can you do night after night still, or now do you need like a night?
I do what I need to do, but I do like doing it more as not weekend warrior, but like, I mean, there's this step I like. I like my, to be comfortable.
Right. Nothing. You've earned that. You have
No,
more than
there's
earned
nothing
that.
easy about traveling and grinding. It is what it is. Travel, grinding, moving. It is what it is. But there's nothing like being on stage, and when that connection is what it's all about.
Do you have fun traveling with the other ladies of the 80s?
The other ladies of the 80s, well, some of them I know very well. Tiffany, depends on who, when it changes all the time, but it's always fun to gather up with some the women that, I've known for so many years, whether it's Sheena Easton or Belinda Carlisle or like, you name it. It's like Debbie Gibson or Paula Abdul, like you're like, hi babe. Hey, babe.
Wow.
Amazing.
I'm from Kentucky, and I know that you used to come to Derby quite a bit. Do
Oh,
you
I do.
still?
Oh, yeah.
You did? Yeah. So I try to go. I went to Oaks this year, so I went to the day before this year, but now we live in Nashville. So, you've always have been a big hit in Louisville at
Yeah.
Derby time. I know
I
that.
love it.
Yes.
Well, I'm a guest for the Barnstable Brown now. It's been 20 years. 20
Mhm.
years. And they just make it such a delight. And the city and just there's nothing like the Kentucky Derby.
Yes.
Well,
And we keep
Bridget would
coming back
definitely
because
agree.
they
I
make
agree.
it just such a wonderful experience for all of us when we go. Open arm. It's just yeah.
You can
Well,
it's radiating.
yeah. Kentucky loves it. Kentucky absolutely loves it.
And
And you're all over the newspaper and everything there. Yeah.
we have the best time. And plus, of course, we're performing and it just brings out the best in all of us. And we're all it's just, I love you get to see this mixture of country, rock, hip hop. I mean, we all come together and we just have a potent honey. Yeah, we just have a great time.
That's awesome. So you've got the tour. The book is out already. It's been out a couple of years.
Yeah,
What's next?
well, during COVID, I actually did record a new record with 9-time Grammy recipient Greg Field. So this is a really important record. And now we have finished mixing, mastering, and now we are figuring out the home for it. And this is my kind of private dancer moment, if you will. And really, we honed in on the material, the song, and Greg is just such a vocalist producer and focused on my voice.
That's wonderful. And if you had to give some advice, or if you had some advice for women who are listening that are in midlife and beyond, that may feel like they're a little stuck and want to keep moving, what words of wisdom would you give them?
It's one step at a time. And that one step is usually the most difficult. So when you're having a bad day, take one breath, deep breath, release it. I've had many therapists over the years or life coaches, and breathe in love, breathe out fear, breathe in life, breathe out doubt. And that's, if you start with a very small chunk, it's things that seem insurmountable. You can, small and steady. That's the tortoise, and it works. And that's where I've come, because there's been moments now that I've been challenged by my body, by mentally, by finance, whatever, we've all been challenged, and everybody has their own story for sure. But that would be my advice. My advice is one step at a time, one moment at a time, and be very realistic. Goals need to be seen. I have an incredible image board. I work with vision boards all the time, and I update mine, or I've had a great one, and I do my cutouts, and it's my little collage, and it's beautiful to have your own little altar for you that you can always, it's your daily affirmation, just waking up and looking at it. It gets you motivated.
That's such great advice for women. Thank you for sharing
Oh, I
that.
hope so. Thank you.
And not only thank you for coming on, but thank you for writing songs that just hit both Bridget and my heart and our listeners' hearts and bring up such wonderful memories from the 80s and 90s. We really truly appreciate your talent and the time you took to speak with us today.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.